guys. Hopefully not too overwhelmed today. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We have collaborated with the Sunshine Coast Beekeepers Club to bring you this very detailed talk today. Hopefully a majority of you have already been to the Varroa workshops because this is a more detailed one of them. So I apologise if it's a bit overwhelming, but we'll get through it. Can everyone hear me okay at the back? They can see the television all right? All right. Does everyone have notepads? It is a long-winded talk, and if you have been to one of our Varroa workshops, you would probably remember walking away from it feeling very overwhelmed. This may be a very condensed version of that, so I apologise, but give it a couple of days and you're going to be fine, I promise. So I'm Tanya Johnson. I came over from New Zealand to come into this job. Obviously, New Zealand has Varroa, so I know a little bit about it. I'd just like to thank the Sunshine Coast Club for having us all here today. And bear with me. It is a long couple of hours, so I will try my best. If we can try to keep the questions until right at the end, that would be really, really good. But if it's burning, if I've forgotten something because there's so much content in here, put your hand up and we'll answer it, but only if it's a really burning question. So, I'm assuming a majority of you are from around here. This is a current update of our map. This is the Varroa mite surveillance map from, hopefully this doesn't go off, from Biosecurity Queensland. You can see the blue there, that's the negative reports that we're getting. And the pink there, that's the positive. So that's where Varroa is, the kind of pinky orange area. It's still going. You can see that we have had one detection up here around, it was around Varroa, so pretty close to us. A majority of this talk today is going to be about integrated pest management, and it is a little bit of a confusing word, so I just wanted to let you know kind of what it was. Hopefully I've got the right slide, yep. You can see that integrated means, mashing together a whole bunch of methods, which is the triangle on the left there. And pest management, well, it's controlling a pest, so managing a pest. And our pest is Varroa. So when we talk about integrated pest management, we talk about a triangle. As we go up the triangle, the more toxic and expensive it gets. So the first step of our integrated pest management is knowledge. Pretty much it's you guys learning about Varroa and you being here today and having that solid understanding of how Varroa will interact with your bees and how you are going to interact with Varroa. Try and go a bit slower, sorry. So for those of you that are new here and don't really know anything about Varroa, head over to varroa.org.au. We have a free training app kind of thing on there. It just gives you the basics of Varroa, maybe a refresher if you needed it. The other places to find knowledge is this free online training. If you're part of this club, our mentors, I've held a Mentor the Mentor Day with them, so they're all over Varroa. Videos, that's what we're for. We're free education. There's 6 of us in the state. I am in this area, so I cover from Brisbane River all the way up to Noosa, maybe Gympie. And your own beekeeping community, so your neighbours, your beekeeping neighbours, your beekeeper friends, you'll find that if you talk with them, they'll be able to give you a bunch of knowledge as well. So the next one is monitoring. That's the next step up. So we can't find Varroa if we're not monitoring. And we do have, people are very hesitant to monitor. I think I talked with the club about this the last time, and they came up with a whole reasons about why they're so scared to monitor their hives for Varroa mite. And one of the biggest ones were queens. So not being able to find your queen and you don't want to wash her. So if you do not feel comfortable in trying to find your queen, so you don't wash her, that's what we can do. We can come out, we mark the queens. Or we have a member here, Ron Button, who has a great method. I'm just going to pop him up here for a few minutes so he can talk about how he finds his queens, because he can't see them on the piece.
Yes, I have been having a problem trying to find the queen. I think other people probably have too. So I did see it on a YouTube video. I've been through quite a lot of those. They're mainly American, but anyhow, they're still bees. And what I've done is I've got a super, and on the bottom of it, I've screwed a queen excluder, like so. And then I was able to find this box. It's a pretty big box to get your baby bees out of, because the baby bees will go through, and hopefully the other ones that you don't really want will fly away. And then, but it fits just neatly over that. Just a sec. And on the bottom here, I've left a few screws out a little bit so that it's easy to centre it over the box, and that's so I don't kill the queen. And that's the main reason that you lose a queen, is they fly away in a swarm, or the beekeeper kills them. So I hope that's of interest to somebody, and good. Thank you very much, Tanya.
Thanks, Ron. So yeah, the queen will stay safe in that top box, and you can get your scoop of bees, which is what you need, out of that bottom box there. But I'm not going to talk too much on monitoring, because again, it's in the basics of Varroa. We're in a more detailed talk today. So I do want to, however, touch on what we are finding as VDOs, Varroa Development Officers, around the country. Bear with me today, my voice is a bit rusty, so hopefully I don't have a coughing fit. Just talk within yourselves if I do. My apologies. But anyway, the differences in monitoring. Now, I know it's a difficult conversation, us killing our bees. When you do monitor, it is, you are sacrificing 300 bees to be able to see whether you have Varroa or not, and not many people like that. So there was the option of the sugar shake. That has been an improved method, or you would have seen on YouTube CO2. So we've done our own tests with that, and the program's actually gone back on the sugar shake. We've done a lot of tests, and even here, the initial detection, one of the detections in Landsborough, the beekeeper had washed with a sugar shake, a sugar roll, 300 bees in the little yellow wash machine, and 0 mites dropped off of that sugar shake, 0 mites. But he took those same bees and put them in alcohol, so methylated spirits, and 4 mites dropped off. So it's not as effective as we're reading online, and that's not the only case. There's been multiple cases of that happening. And so the same kind of with the CO2. I do think there is room for CO2. For sugar shake, personally, I think it's out, because it kills your bees anyways. If you know the anatomy of a bee, it has spiracles down the side there, breathing holes, and they get blocked from the powdered sugar. So they die slowly. Whereas the soapy water method, or the methylated spirits, kills them instantly. It's more humane. But there is room there for the CO2. But no one's been able to find a contraption just yet on how to make it as effective. And so you will see the case study up here, like a beekeeper used CO2, I think it was a video actually, used CO2 and 4 mites dropped off, but took the same bees, put them in methylated spirits, and a further 15 dropped off. That is very, very significant because there's a threshold for a reason, and if you go under or over that threshold, there might be, a chance you miss Varroa, and or under the threshold you might miss Varroa, and it could be detrimental to your hives. The other good thing here is drone uncapping. So when you are doing your washes, it is a good idea to do drone uncapping on the side. So get your drones and uncap them. And that's how our first Brisbane detection was found. She didn't find it, the beekeeper didn't find it in the alcohol wash, but she did take some drones out of drone brood, and she found 2 mites there. So low level infestation, drone brood uncapping is really good. So that's the very basics of monitoring, right? So I'm not going to teach you how to do it here today, but there's a lot online. I'm pretty sure the beekeeper next to you will know what they're doing, so just ask around. And if not, I'm here, I can help you going forward. The next thing you want to do is upload to B123. It is optional, however, I do try to push beekeepers because it's how we get our data for our surveillance map there. For example, it's a 3-page survey pretty much asking you whether or not you have Varroa. And the people that don't goes blue on the map, the people that do, it goes pinky orange on the map. The problem here is we've got 10,000 registered beekeepers in Queensland. It's a lot of beekeepers, but we're only getting reports of 400 a month. So if you ask me where Varroa is, I can't tell you because there's 10,000 beekeepers out there that have 200,000 hives, probably more. And we're only getting reports of 400, and it could be the same person or the same people reporting over and over again. So a really good idea to record and report, not just for us, but for you guys. If I had Varroa, I know that I would want to tell my neighbour down the road. Sorry, I'll go back. So this data from the survey gets generated into the map. You guys get there? You got the photo? Okay, so our next step, and this is what we're here to talk about today, is to plan. You definitely want to plan with Varroa going forward. There's 2 types of different plans, or you can create your own. This one here is, this has been created by a bunch of videos around the country. It is more detailed and more complex. It has a cost calculator there, and it does go by weeks. Now, I did not give you this one today. I gave you this one here because it's much more simple, and in terms of simplicity and trying to get the message across, I am going to talk to this one today. I have examples, and it's hopefully going to be a lot easier than the one that I just showed you. So the next step up in our triangle is cultural control. What is cultural control? So in our books, in the Varroa Mite workshop, we were given books, and in the books it said that cultural control was selective breeding. So targeting Varroa using queen genetics. I'm sure people have heard about this. Yes, there is cultural control, but personally, as a beekeeper, I don't like to give beekeepers outs. So if I told you all here today, no worries guys, you'll be able to control Varroa with a queen and her genetics, they'll be fine. That kind of makes us lazy, right? It means that we're relying on the queen and we're not responsible for ourselves. So for me, cultural control is good beekeeping practices. So you can see here, it's regular brood inspections, monitoring Varroa levels, minimising stress factors, sanitation of equipment, reducing equipment rotation, so barrier systems, swarm control, pest control. Lo and behold, you guys are already doing integrated pest management for small hive beetle, by the way. And maintaining strong colonies. So it's just what you're doing in everyday life, right? It's what you do with your bees anyway. And in terms of cultural control, we can't track it. So I don't actually have cultural control on our plans here today. I just hope that you guys are doing it. So I have given you this paper here. This is our plan going forward. And when we do talk about this today, try to imagine your apiary. So you can see up there the yellow arrow, that's per apiary. So whether you have one or whether you have multiple hives in a certain spot, that's your apiary. And it is per season. So at the moment, we're in the 2025-2026 season. So this is really great. It will give you a record going back. So you can use this to make more better informed decisions next season, the 2026-2027 season. You don't have to use these plans. You can create your own. If you're a whiz on Excel, I definitely recommend you create your own and make it work for you. But in terms of simplicity, we'll just talk to this. So if we're all looking at our plans, think of your apiary when we go through this. My apiary is in Caloundra. So what are my climatic conditions at my apiary? I went onto BOM, which is the, someone help me out here because I'm a Kiwi. There we go, Bureau of Meteorology. Okay, there we go, thanks guys. I went onto the BOM and got some averages for each month in my area in Caloundra. I didn't fill it all out because I didn't really want to overwhelm you guys with it. So I just took some months and I put some data in there. So you can see here for January, I had 30.2 degrees on average in this certain apiary. In April, it dropped down to 24.2 on average. Yep, 24.2. And that was for my maximums. Then I've got my temperature minimums. And my minimum for December was 20.7. And my minimum for May was 15.1. You're going to get a little bit confused in this first part because you may not know, or we may have never done this before and you may not know why I'm talking about this, but it will make sense eventually at the end. It's all to do with treatments. And then we've got the wet season. So for those of you that do live around the Caloundra area, or I know just in general, in March and April this year, can you remember what we had? We had a lot of rain. We had Cyclone Alfred, right? So what I've done is I've colour-coded or colour-blocked March and April because those were the months that I was absolutely not possible to get into my hives. Day and night, it was raining a lot. And I just couldn't do it. I could not get into my hives. But for example, December, January, February, it rained. It rained a lot as well. But that was at 4 p.m. So we had beautiful days like today. And then 4 p.m, 5 p.m. would hit and it would pour down. But I was still able to get into my apiary in the morning. So keep this in mind and think about this in your apiary and your climatic conditions. It could be, if you're all in the same area, talk with each other too because you'll be able to help each other out. The next one here is a little bit confusing as well. What is my hive population? And people laugh at me when I say this because, you know, what, you're going to count every single bee? No. So this is just an average as well. So we're going to take all of our hives around the apiary, whether you have 2, whether you have 10. And we're going to get an average of each of them. So you can see for August, I have 7 frames of brood. Maybe some of you already have 10 frames of brood. I certainly hope you don't. So on average, my apiary in Caloundra has 7 frames of brood right now, and roughly 45,000 bees. So how you can judge how many bees you have in your hive is ideally one full depth box is 20,000 to 30,000 bees. So if you've got a brood box and a super, you've got about 45,000 bees, right? At the moment, I've only got two boxes, which is my brood box and my super. You can see in December and January, my hives have hit peak, probably before that too, but they've hit peak. So I've got 10 frames of brood, and I have nearly 60,000 to 80,000 bees in my hive. They are pumping. But if we look at June, in June I only had 3 frames of brood on average, and only 35,000 bees, so not much. That's about a box and a half, not even that. Why is this important? So you can see the growth rate of your hives and how Varroa is growing in your hives. You can see this blue line here. Hopefully I've got the right slide. Yep. You can see this blue line here is our bees, and you can see that that matches with my season. So I've started from very little bees and brood, and then December, January hits, and I've hit a peak, and then by June, I've gotten low again. So you can see that right here. Now I know what my bees are doing. I can tell what Varroa is doing in my hive. So the yellow line, that's Varroa. You can see in spring, as our hives start to build up, Varroa might lag behind. Our bees hit a peak in December and January, and shortly after, the Varroa might also peak. And then as our population decreases, our honeybee population decreases, so does the Varroa, but not by much. The problem here is that there was a lot of brood, and the Varroa mite had reached a peak. But now our bees and our brood, our honeybee brood, are decreasing, but the Varroa numbers are still there. So the ratio of mites to bees is very incredible. It's much, much more because we've got less bees and more Varroa mite. So it's not the biggest, I guess, yeah. For me, it's very, very important, but it's up to you whether you want to know what Varroa mite is doing in your hive or not, when it will peak, is what I'm trying to say. The next one, which is a difficult one for people, when does nectar come into my hives? So when are the trees producing nectar? You can see here in June and July, I've crossed it out. Can you see that? Yep. I've crossed it out there. I may have a tiny bit of nectar coming into my hive, but it's not enough for me to really worry about. And if it was going to be for the bees. Unless you're a commercial. If you're a commercial, you do try to chase the flow, and then that's going to be a bit more difficult, and you have to plan a little bit more better. But by September to February, there's a certain tree in Caloundra that I want. There's that nectar that I want, that honey that I want, so I can sell to my consumers. So I've blocked that out. I've colour blocked it. There's multiple ways you can do this. You can either colour block it like I have. I've done it green. You can put the tree in per month because it could be multiple trees. Or I've had a beekeeper say to me, well, I've got really detailed records about how many frames of honey I've removed from my hive each month. Can I put that in? Yes, you can. However it will work for you, whatever you want to do, as long as you can try and plan going forward. Again, this will all make sense very, very soon. Now, March and April, I've crossed out. Can anyone tell me why they think it would be crossed? Not the people that have sat through this, by the way. Rain, exactly. So, there's a dearth. And a dearth is when honey is supposed to be coming into the hives, but it's not, for some reason. And that was because Cyclone Alfred was on. And for many of you here today, your hives have probably got very little honey coming into your hives. I have been to a few just this week that are near starving because there's been no nectar. And why is that? Because of the rain. So the rain actually washes the nectar out of the flowers in the tree, and then the bees have nothing. There's another part of dearth as well, and that's when it gets too hot and the sun dries out the flowers, so there's no nectar in them too. It is important to note though when that wet season is and when that dearth is, because it means you don't have honey coming into your hive. You could potentially treat in those months. And then you can see in May I've got a little bit of nectar coming in. Maybe I can take it if it's sufficient. Maybe I'll just leave it for the winter. So you can see June, there's no nectar coming in, it's winter. I'm just going to leave May's honey for winter time, for the bees. But this is me. These are just examples from me. You choose how you want to do it. Okay, the next one. When does the hive want to swarm? I've had many beekeepers come up to me and say, okay, well they've actually swarmed, around this certain time. But for those of you that actually know the queen cycle, it actually takes about 16 days for her to hatch out, them to get ready and swarm. So it's not when your hive swarms, it's when they want to swarm, which is a couple of weeks beforehand. Some of you have probably already got swarms, right? I think Lynn mentioned to me that she's getting swarm calls already. So I've put August to February. In New Zealand, swarming would kind of stop around November, December, but that's because in my region there was only a flow of 3 or 4 months. So the bees would stop thinking about trying to reproduce, and they were thinking more about trying to keep that population so they could keep that honey, right? So in the spring, they're thinking about reproduction. After springtime, they're thinking about trying to get honey for the winter. So they're trying to think about hibernation. But this is really, really important, knowing when your hive wants to swarm and what to do about it. So I'm going to sit on this slide for a little bit. So we do need to know when swarm season is and when your apiary and your hives are wanting to swarm, because going forward, swarm control is actually mite control. For those of you that know Ben Oldroyd, Professor Ben Oldroyd, he's a researcher, honeybee researcher here in, we're very lucky to have him in Queensland. He's actually up in Townsville. So he surveys feral colonies as well as the Asian honeybee that's up there. So back in the late 90s, Professor Ben Oldroyd, he done a survey on the feral colonies down in Victoria, at a national park in Victoria. And he came back he counted the amount of colonies in this certain area, and that survey came back with about 50 to 150 feral colonies in that area. Now he's done his scientific stuff in the background there, his scientific magic, and it actually turns out there's 50 to 150 feral colonies per square kilometre of the east coast of Australia. Now that sounds a lot, and if you think about it, that's a commercial load of bees per square kilometre. Obviously not so much in the urban areas, maybe we'll have about 50 feral colonies on average, but out where there's a lot of trees, so I'm sorry David, the national park, there is a lot of feral colonies there. Why is this a problem? Because of reinfestation. So a lot of you might have heard that these next few years are going to be really, really difficult, and we are seeing that in New South Wales. So our videos around the country, each week we meet with each other and we get case studies so that I can teach you about these kinds of things and really kind of help you and give you some idea on what's happening. Reinfestation is real. Professor Ben Oldroyd's paper has really come back as the truth, because we wouldn't see the amount of reinfestation that we're having if that wasn't correct, right? So just to give you a few ideas here, what happens with the ferrules and how the process works is you cannot manage Varroa if it's a ferrule, right? So the ferrules, they don't have someone to manage them, which means they're getting more and more Varroa numbers, and they're eventually going to die out. The Varroa is going to take over. Ferrules and unmanaged colonies, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. What happens when those colonies die out, those feral colonies die out? Interestingly, Varroa mite can live off of a host for 5 days. So the Varroa mite are actually chilling out in those feral colonies, but so is all of that honey that feral colony was making. So there's no guard bees, right? Which means your managed colonies that are just below, they're going to go up and rob all of that honey. And the Varroa mite are going to jump onto your managed bees and bring them back to your hive. So that's what's happening, and that's how reinfestation works. Again, with the unmanaged colonies, it's a free-for-all. That is a real worry. And just to give you a little bit of case studies there, we're already seeing it in the Lockyer Valley. So a beekeeper found Varroa mite in his hives. He treated with Varroa, done this 6 to 8 weeks, pulled the strips out, and at the time he didn't do his washes. I don't know why, just to see how effective those washes, the treatments were, but he went back a week later anyway, and then he went and washed them. So that a week later, after pulling those strips out, those washes returned a number of 8 mites in a wash. That's unheard of around the world because the treatments should work, and they should bring the numbers back down for a little bit of time before you reach those numbers again. So already he had 8 mites in a wash, and some people might say, well, are they resistant? Well, the Varroa mite that first came here was tested, and there's been no resistance in those mites, so no genetic resistance. Which means it has to be reinfestation, right? So that was a week later. That day he called the video down there, Sarah. She went out about 5 days later, and they got into those same hives, and they done washes again, and 5 days later that wash was sitting at 18 mites. So within not very long of taking the treatments out, it had jumped right up to 18. To give you a bit of perspective here, our threshold is 5 at the moment. So that is a little bit scary. I'm not trying to freak you out, I'm just trying to give you the reality here. And then again, New South Wales case study, Coffs Harbour. The beekeeper treated, and this time he was very lucky. He washed 0 when he took the treatments out, which means it worked. But 5 weeks later he went back, and there were 27 mites in the washes, which means he had to treat again. So what will happen if you let your hive swarm, once these ferrules die out and you're letting your hive swarm, eventually those swarms are going to turn into ferrules, and that cycle is going to happen again. So your managed hives will rob them, they'll bring Varroa back, and it's just going to be this continuous system of Varroa, which we don't want. So going forward, swarm control is definitely mite control. There is another problem to swarming. With Varroa mite, they live 30% phoretically, which means on the bees. So in your hive, you've got your brood and your bees. 30% of Varroa are living on your bees, and 70% of Varroa are living under the brood. The bees can't, the treatments and all of this kind of stuff, they can't get under the brood other than one treatment, which I'll talk about. But it means those Varroa mite are safe. So that's a bit of a scary figure. But if we think about a hive when it swarms, when it's kind of, when it's a normal hive, it's not swarmed, you've got a kind of a balance with Varroa and your bees. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm trying to think as I'm going on. So you've got a balanced kind of number. Sometimes it can get out of control, but in majority it's balanced. When your hive swarms, 50-80% of bees fly off with that swarm, but the brood stays in the hive, right? The bees don't swarm with the brood. And so what happens is you've still got that 70% of mites hatching out, but you've got less brood, you've got less bees in the hive, which means these Varroa are trying to attack these bees, and it's just really, really detrimental to your hive. There's more impacts. They're just going to take over. They're actually called vampire mites. So you definitely don't want to have your hive swarm. If you accidentally have a swarm and you've got Varroa in your hive, I would definitely be going back within the next week or so and doing a wash to make sure that impact, those numbers aren't out of control. So that is a little bit about swarming. I feel like I've forgotten something. I have. So also when they swarm, right, this is something that we don't have in New Zealand, but you guys do. What happens with a hive when already, without Varroa, when you have such a small hive, such a small number, a small hive beetle takes over. So New South Wales, they're actually getting so many reports of small hive beetle slime outs, when really it was Varroa that had dwindled the numbers so much, and then small hive beetle, they were opportunistic and they took over. So it's kind of a double whammy. So definitely going forward, swarm control is mite control. How are we all going? All right so far? Good. All right, our next one. When does the queen start laying drones? So it's not when we see drones in our hive. We're very lucky here in Queensland, and we have continuous brood and continuous drones, which is a little bit scary, but that's okay. So for Caloundra, they have started to lay around the end of July, start of August, and I stopped seeing I saw the last brood hatch out around May. So if you know a drone, if you know the drone gestation period, it takes about 24 days. So I counted 24 days back from May, and it took me to April. So she laid her last drone brood in April. This will make sense very soon, I promise. And then requeening. So if we wanted to requeen with sows, we do need drones in the air, right? So I can requeen with sows from July to April, roughly. And then if I really needed a queen, I could go out of state and find a mated queen somewhere and use her in May or June. So that will be, it's all a little bit confusing at the moment, guys, but I promise it gets a little bit easier. So I hope that as we talked through that, you're thinking about your own apiaries and thinking about your climatic conditions in your own hives and when they swarm and the queen and whatnot. Because now we're going to get into mechanical and chemical methods. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break, probably between mechanical and chemical, just to get your heads wrapped around it, let you use a bathroom and stuff, but let me go through the mechanical first. So the next step up is our mechanical, which is using tools as a control method, so no chemical. So help. I have Varroa in my hives. How do I know when to treat? Well, you have to monitor the threshold level. So you've got Varroa now, and I know some people in here have Varroa. When you have Varroa in your hive, that drone uncapping that I was talking about doesn't give you a threshold, so you need to chuck that out. If you're using the sticky board method, that doesn't give you a threshold, it just gives you presence, so that needs to be chucked out. Well, not chucked out, but for later use. The only two things that will work, that will give you a number going forward, is the alcohol wash or soapy water wash. So that's how you know how many mites are in your hive, and what to do about it. So right here we've got the treatment threshold, which is a standard threshold around the world. It's about a 2 or 3% infestation. Bear with me. So a threshold, it's when it starts to impact you economically. So it's when Varroa mite is the numbers are so high in your hive that it's probably going to cost you more if you let that go. So definitely there's a certain threshold, which at the moment is 5. If you're over 5 mites in your wash at the moment, then it's probably going to make more impact in your pocket and as well on the bees. So I've done a little bit of a naughty thing here, and I've crossed out plan and I've put act. And the reason for that is if we think about your gardens, your veggie gardens, and you found a weed in your garden, would you let that weed sprout and seed before plucking it out? It's exactly the same with Varroa, guys. If you've got 1 to 4 mites in your wash, that's when we want to start implementing our mechanical methods. So we're going to go into the mechanical methods now. Remember, 1 to 4 mites, mechanical methods. Drone trapping. When can we do drone trapping? So drone trapping is Varroa mite trapping using drones. So when can we do it? Well, I'm going to look now at my drone brood rearing, and I can only trap drones when my queens are laying drones, right? That's what the whole thing's about. I can't do it in May or June because there's no drones in my hive for me to trap. So drone trapping, what is it? Well, pretty much what I just said, sorry. It's using drones to trap Varroa mite. Sorry, I am all over the place today, guys, just bear with me. So Varroa mites actually prefer drones. Why is this? Because they have a longer gestation period, so 24 days compared to 21 days like our workers. You can see here on my figure, day 8 or 9, the nurse bee goes to cap over the cell, right? So Varroa mite, they're actually blind, but they've got a very, very good sense of smell. So day 8 or 9, those larvae there, they're giving off this pheromone to our nurse bees to say, hey, I'm ready to be capped over, I'm ready to be sealed, and I can finish my pupation. Varroa mite can smell that. They take advantage of that, they jump off the nurse bee, they go down into the cell and they hide underneath that larvae and mimic the smell of that pheromone, which means they become undetected. And within 15 to 20 hours, that cell is capped over and the Varroa mite is safe. 15 to 20 hours later, oops, sorry, there we go. In the next couple of days, the mother mite, the foundress mite, she's in there, so she is at day 10, 11, and 12. She's just chilling in there. You can see she's in the same spot. So what she's done is she's created a feeding wound on that larva. So there's a wound there and she's feeding from that larva. She takes a couple of days just to get, ambient temperatures and stuff in that cell and make things perfect. Then she lays a male egg. That male is her son. And every 30 hours after that, she's laying a female, her daughters. So eventually they mate with each other and the daughters then become fertile. So at day 21, our worker bee emerges, and so does the mother mite and 2 of her daughters. There are more Varroa mite in the cell than that, but the thing is, the male mite and any immature mites, they'll die in that cell. So hopefully you guys at the back there can see, but there's a couple of white things at the bottom. Those are the immature daughters and the male. So that's the worker, right? So the worker, the foundress, emerges with the worker and 2 of her babies. But the drones, they have a longer gestation period, which means when the drone emerges, the mother mite emerges, but 3 or 4 of her babies, because she can lay a bit more and the daughters have a little bit more time to become mature. So this is why Varroa might prefer drone brood. Okay, so what do we do about it? Luckily, we are smarter than Varroa, and we've come up with contraptions and timing on how to trap Varroa mite in these frames here. So there's multiple frames we can use to trap Varroa mite. We have an ideal frame, which thanks to Ron, he's already started with this. So we've got an ideal frame. This is drone cells. I'm going to pass it around the room if that's okay. These are drone cells, much larger than the worker cells. And what happens is they'll draw them out as drone cells and the queen will lay in them. So I'm going to just pass this around. So we've got ideal frames. We have a larger green frame, which I'm also going to pass around. We also have embedded foundation. So it's very hard to find in Australia at the moment, but there are certain suppliers that do make them. What they've done is they've created foundation with the drone cell size, which probably I prefer most because it's more natural for our bees. And, you know, they'll draw them out a little bit easier than the things you have to go through with these ones here. But that's what I prefer, and everyone's different. So some people may already have drone frames in their hives. I don't know if you've opened up the hive and the whole hive is just full of, the whole frame is just full of drone. You can also use that. What you'd do is you'd just freeze it. So just a little bit of disclaimers about all of these. They all work differently. So this big green drone frame here, if you try to put that straight into the brood box, which is where you need to put it because that's where the queen lays, they're probably going to struggle drawing that out. It's plastic. If you've got timber, they're not going to like that. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to wax that either with a paintbrush or a paint roller. You'd have to wax it. You'd have to put it in your super. You'd have to let them draw it out when there's a flow on. Obviously, it's going to fill with honey. You extract that honey and you freeze the frame ready for when you have Varroa mite. That's the green drone frame there. Similar to the ideal frame. The ideal frame too that works on bee space. So if you've got a full depth box and you put the ideal frame in a full depth box, they're going to do something like this. There's a bit of extra brood space down the bottom there, so they're going to draw out on the bottom and create drone brood there. Don't ask me why, they're very smart creatures, but they do. And then again, we've got the embedded frame. That's easy, you just put it down straight into the brood box and they'll start to draw it out. Now, you have to remember the queen is not going to lay in any of these methods from day one. So you do need to count, and you never let the drone frame go past 21 days, or 20 days for that matter, because from day 21 to day 24, the drones will start to hatch out. And what happens when they hatch out? You've got a huge mite bomb. You're breeding mites. So you don't want to do that. Ideally, if you're using any of these methods, you would take it out around here, day 15 and day 16. That's your safe space, because any earlier The girls, they might still be capping over the cells, which means you're not going to trap all the Varroa any later. The mites are going to be hatching out. So your safe space is here. But remember, you have to count from there, right? Which means you have to do all of these methods, and it doesn't mean that the queen's going to lay in it from day one. So you need to do some trials now, and you need to figure out when or which day your queen starts to lay in, how fast they're going to draw that out, maybe have them drawn out. I guess for perspective, when you extract your honey and you've got stickies, they don't start laying or doing anything with those stickies in day one. All they do is start cleaning them, right, in that brood box. So it does take a little bit of time for our bees to make it a perfect space for our queen to lay in. So just think about that. So back to this. Sorry, bear with me. Roughly around day 15, day 16 is when you want to take it out of the hive. And when you do take it out of the hive, you want to freeze it straight away because, the Varroa mite, they can live a long time. So if you've just got that out exposed, your hives can go and rob it and it will just create a mess. So put it in the freezer if you can, 24 to 48 hours, and that will freeze the Varroa mite and the bees as well in there. So timing and record keeping is critical, obviously. You do need to keep good time and records for this because, again, you don't want to become a mite bomb. So a few other things with these. How do you remove them from the comb? How do you remove the drone? I can't remember whether it was here or somewhere else, but a member had come up to me and said, "Oh, I tried it out and I left the frame for a couple of days and then I tried to remove all the drones and it was just, that strong fishy smell sometimes when you've got rotten brood. That's what it was. So ideally when you take it out of the freezer, you can grab your uncapping fork and just uncap the drones, pull all the drones out, give it a bang on a surface, try and get that out, and then maybe just give it a bit of a wash with a hose or a little bit of water and put it out in the sun to dry, and you can reuse it. If you don't want to do that, the ideal frame in the bee space, you can just chop that off and put it into the bin. You do have to be aware of biosecurity though, and think about if you're putting it in the bin, where is that wax and where is that brood going to end up? Our tip owners, they probably don't know much about biosecurity. They could potentially, chuck it in the tip, and the bag could rip open, and anyone that is near a recycling centre or a tip centre, your bees will probably go and rob that exposed brood wax honey, and it would just be a mess. So do think about your biosecurity obligations there. So that there is drone trapping, is Varroa mite trapping in drones. This green drone frame or the embedded frame, if you do it once, it's 46% effective. If you do it twice, so consecutively, it's 89% effective, which means 89% of Varroa mite are going to be gone from your hive. Perfect for when you've got 1 to 4 mites or even afterwards. The next is splitting or brood sacrifice. So I'll talk a little bit about splitting for those crazy people that do want to split in this time. But splitting, essentially you're halving the Varroa mite numbers. So there is a method that you want to do when you're going forward with splitting. And splitting is a good idea as well if you need to recuperate your numbers. So you've lost some hives and you want to recuperate your numbers. Also, for those of you with 1 hive, having 2 hives with Varroa is probably better. Just so if this hive is weakened from Varroa, you've got something to support it from the other hive. You can interchange things. So going forward, splitting, You would have your original hive. So say this is my original hive. Thanks, Rod. And then we've got our nuke boxes. So this is our original hive, and then we've got our nuke box here. You would take all your capped brood from this hive here. Remember how I said that 70% of mites live under the capping, so under the brood? Essentially what you're doing with splitting is removing 70% of mites if you remove the cap brood, put them into your nuke, and if you all look on your treatment tables that I've given you today, you treat nucleuses with half the treatment because they're half a hive. So this here is a 6 frame or 5 frame. Then you've got your original hive here. But remember, there's still 30% of hives on 30% of mites here. So you've got your bees and you've got your open brood. You need to do something about that one. So that's where the oxalic vapor will probably come in handy. That could work, something fast to knock them down. This here, we've got a problem, right? Because we've got 70% of Varroa in the nuke. Well, that's pretty easy. You would just put a synthetic treatment or API or some kind of treatment in there, extended release, so that as these mites are hatching out in our nuke, the treatment is getting them as they hatch out. Pretty easy way to split going forward. So if you don't want to split and you have a swarming problem, or even if you've got a huge infestation in your hive, that's where brood sacrificing could come in handy. So brood sacrificing is pretty much exactly the same as drone trapping, except we're using our worker brood. You don't have to do anything because the workers are already in the frame. I've done this in the past when I've had heavy infestations in my hives. I've just removed that seal brood to not let the Varroa mite hatch out. I've just removed it and froze it just like we do with the drone trapping. It is a good way to control swarming as well. So maybe with the swarming you can remove the eggs so they're not older. You just remove the frame of eggs, and then that way you're diminishing the population. One of those frames there, they're about 2,000 bees per side, I think it is. So essentially you're getting rid of a lot of population if you're just removing the eggs. It will save you in swarming. Alright, so that's splitting brood sacrifice. When can we do that? Well, you just have to remember with these two methods here that you're going to dwindle your population. So your population will go down in the hive. So maybe you don't want to do it before a honey flow, or potentially before winter as well. You want to keep them strong. Alright, the next one. Queen isolation or artificial brood break. So around the world we have natural brood breaks. We're very lucky in New Zealand, where in my region at least we'd get a natural brood break of from May to July, June, a couple of months anyway. Essentially what it is when the queen is hibernating and she's stopping to lay brood, which means that hive is getting a bit of a break. But with this, when there's no brood in the hive, all of that Varroa, that 70% of Varroa that's under the cappings, they're now exposed. So they've got nowhere to hide. Really good method to control Varroa, because then you can just hit it with a treatment and all of those Varroa will die. Well, not all of them, but a majority of them will die. So that's what an artificial brood break is. How do we do it? With these methods here, we cage the queen and we leave her in the cage for a little bit, let all the brood inside the hive hatch out, and until that Varroa mite becomes exposed, and then we can treat that way. Now if you don't want to treat, you can use this metal cage up there on the left. Essentially what you would do is put one of the drone frames in, or a worker frame, and it becomes queen isolation and drone trapping in one without any chemicals. Really, really good method, but remember, just with the drone trapping, it is time sensitive, so you do need to be onto it and you need to have that time. But if you're really against chemicals, there is this really great option here that will work. The other methods are these little guys here. So this little blue one is exactly the same as the white one there. What you would do is you just cut a little slot out in that frame, put this in. It's just a queen excluder, and the bees will still be able to feed the queen, but she's trapped and she can't lay. Let you have a look. So essentially with these, what you would do, we've got our hive here again. You would catch the queen or put this cage there, however you want to do it. Put the cages in the middle of the hive. So you would take out one frame or however many it takes for you to put the contraption in the hive. And the reason why I say the middle is because our queen pheromone still needs to get around the hive. So again, going forward, if you've got an old queen, you probably need to start thinking about requeening frequently, because with these methods, there is the potential that the bees will be like, why isn't my queen laying? Freak out and supersede. And that does happen. Even with some of our chemicals, if we don't have a young queen, they're going to freak out because there's this chemical in their hive, but the bees don't really know what's going on, and they have rolled them a couple times. So going forward, you put the contraption in here, and she's in the middle, she's in this one frame, all the other brood is hatching out around her. This pheromone is going, circling around the hive. There's no brood. If you're using the silver frame there, you've got one frame of brood in there, which means all of this Varroa mite is going to be attracted to one frame of brood to hide, and that's when you use your drone trapping. You just remove it and freeze it. But with this one here, there's nowhere for the Varroa mite to hide. So you would use oxalic acid, the aluminum cap strips, oxalic strips, and you can knock them down very, very fast. So there are multiple ones you can use. I can't talk to all of them. I've only used the blue one and I know quite well about the silver one, but it is ideal. The problem is you have to find your queen. So you might have to get used to trying to find your queen. Marking them will help a lot. Or if you are part of the club, our mentors are incredible. They'll be able to help you out as well. I guess the only thing about that is, so we've already talked about the timing of the metal cage. Again, it's very similar to the drone trapping timing. These blue cages, you just need to remember that you have to wait until the very last drone hatches out and you can release her, or you can release her a couple of days beforehand, but just make sure that if you release her, the bees aren't going to seal any new cappings before those last drones hatch out. Nearly done, guys. It's nearly break, I promise. Couple more. Alright, screen bottom boards. These guys here. A lot of us already have them. A lot of us already have them. We have them for small hive beetle. They come in handy too. When you've got a hygienic queen and hygienic bees, they naturally groom themselves, right? Which means they naturally groom Varroa mite off. That Varroa mite drops to the floor. If we don't have a mesh bottom or a ventilated bottom or a slotted bottom, there's the potential of that Varroa mite to crawl back up and crawl back onto the bees. Now, it's not significant. The drop is only 1 to 1.5% a day, but every little bit counts. So one mite in a wash, when you're doing your wash, is actually hundreds in the hive. And one mite killed in spring is 1,000 mites prevented in the autumn. So, 1 to 1.5%, it doesn't sound like much, but it really, really is. And just to put this into perspective, A few months ago in the Lockyer Valley, our video went out to one beekeeper who had never done his washes, and they knew that there was Varroa there since Christmas last year. Never done their washes, so she was expecting to find something big, and she did. That wash returned a number of 204 mites just in that wash bottle. Now you guys are going, wow, get this. We done the figures on that, and you remember me talking about the 30% of mites on the bees and the 70% of mites in the brood. Well, it turns out there was about 20,400 mites just on those bees with those numbers in that wash. That's about a 3% infestation. But remember, 70% of mites live under the brood. So we worked out there was over 100,000 mites in that hive with a wash of 204. So, going forward, 1 to 1.5% actually helps. So, if you don't have screen bottoms, if you're a commercial and you don't have screen bottoms, I don't know how beneficial it would be, but if you have the opportunity to change your bottoms, perfect. We've got one here from one of the members, David. If you want to come up and have a look later, he modified his solid bottoms and put mesh on it. Where are you here, David? Where are you? Do you want to talk to him?
How did you do it?
I'm an avid DIY, and I belong to the men's shed, and I salvage pellets to make my bases, and I followed a plan that I found online, and I've made 12 of them for my hives, and they've got a slide out core flute bottom, courtesy of the recent federal election, and
Oh yeah, hey.
I'm all for saving money, and
Why not?
and as the only thing that I really had to pay for wasn't even the paint that was given to me, the mesh, which I got from Be Positive. He sells a 1 metre by 1 metre roll for $55, and you get 6 bases out of it. So that's it. Vaseline. Just I'll paint it on with a paintbrush. Somebody said it at one of the conferences that, don't use Vaseline, it's not food grade or something. Well, Vaseline is medical grade because I'm a pharmacist and I know.
So yeah, you can make your own, just like David. There's ones you can buy if you're not handy with tools. They're a little bit more expensive. I want to say $50 to $70. But they are beneficial. They have their place in our IPM triangle. The last one here in our mechanical tools is the Varroa controller. I don't know how many of you have already heard about this, but this definitely does have its place in our IPM triangle too. Essentially what it is this big heat box that heats brood up to, not the bees are taken off, but it heats the brood up to a certain temperature, which is I think 40 degrees. It's enough to keep the brood alive, but it kills the Varroa mite. The Varroa mite can't handle it. So really, really good, right? There's a few downsides though. You can only fit 10 to 20 frames in this box. It takes about 2 hours for it to cook the 10 to 20 frames. And it's about $6,000 or $7,000, depending on what one it is. And so this is where community comes in, and maybe if you're good enough friends with each other, you can put in and use it within each other, depending on how you want to go about it. Now you can see on my plan here that I have not got it for me to use in December and January, right? Screen bottom boards you can use all year round, but I can't use the Varroa controller in December and January. Why could that be? It's much too hot. So essentially here in Queensland, we can get up to 40-degree days. It's very, 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 very hot for this kiwi. And so they rolled the Varroa controller out northern New South Wales, and they done some tests, and they done it on a 40-degree day. And when they put that brood, the treated brood, back into the hive, the bees weren't able to cool it down enough, and the brood died. So it was a waste of time, waste of money, all of that kind of stuff. So maybe in the hotter summer months, don't try that. But guys, that is the mechanical tools. I am going to let everyone have a very quick 5-10 minute toilet break, and just to wrap your heads around what I've said, and then we're going to get into chemicals.